Elena Martinez was adjusting range flags in the Colorado wind when the two competitive shooters started placing bets on whether the old woman could even hit a barn door. $20 says Grandma here can't hit anything past 50 yards, Jake. Thompson laughed, gesturing at Elena's simple work clothes and weathered hands. His partner Brad Mitchell doubled down. Make it 40. Look at that ancient rifle she's carrying. But when Elena calmly asked what target they wanted her to hit, Jake pointed to the impossible shot, a small steel plate 2-3 miles away that even seasoned snipers struggled with using high-tech scopes. Elena didn't adjust her scope. Didn't even look through it. She simply shouldered her rifle, fired once, and the distant ping echoed back across the valley. The electronic scoring system lit up with a direct hit, and suddenly every conversation on the range went silent, because they just watched something that shouldn't have been possible from someone they'd completely underestimated. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning mist still clung to the peak surrounding Precision Point shooting range as the first serious shooters of the day arrived at the facility. Located 20 minutes outside Millfield, Colorado, the range sat in a natural valley that stretched for miles, offering some of the longest shooting distances available to civilians in the western United States. The facility itself was a testament to serious marksmanship, with indoor lanes for precision work and an outdoor range that extended beyond what most people could see clearly with the naked eye. Elena Martinez had been at the range since sunrise, walking the extended outdoor course with a bucket of equipment and a worn canvas bag slung over her shoulder. At 67, she moved with the steady pace of someone who understood that consistency mattered more than speed. Her gray hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore the kind of sturdy work clothes that prioritized function over appearance: canvas pants with reinforced knees, a long-sleeved shirt that had seen countless mornings like this one, and boots that gripped the uneven terrain without complaint. The rifle she carried wasn't the kind that drew attention at first glance. While other shooters arrived with cases full of precision instruments and optics that cost more than most people's cars, Elena's weapon was simple, functional, and showed the kind of wear that came from actual use rather than display. The stock had been refinished multiple times. The metal held the patina of careful maintenance, and the scope mounted on top looked like it belonged on a hunting rifle from decades past rather than a competition weapon. Jake Thompson pulled his lifted truck into the parking area with the kind of aggressive confidence that announced his presence before he'd even stepped out. At 28, he'd spent the last 5 years building a reputation in competitive shooting circles, collecting trophies and endorsement deals that let him carry the newest, most expensive equipment available. His shooting partner, Brad Mitchell, emerged from the passenger side, equally loaded down with gear that sparkled with newness and precision engineering. Both men wore clothing that advertised their sponsors and achievements: tactical pants with more pockets than anyone could reasonably use, shirts bearing the logos of ammunition companies and optics manufacturers, and sunglasses that cost more than most people spent on groceries in a month. They moved with the swagger of people accustomed to being recognized, discussing their recent competition results loud enough for anyone nearby to overhear. The morning air carried their voices clearly as they unpacked cases full of equipment, each rifle worth more than a decent used car, each scope capable of magnification levels that could count whiskers on a prairie dog at considerable distance. Their conversation centered on the upcoming regional championships and their strategies for maintaining their rankings in various shooting disciplines. Elena continued her methodical work, checking target positions and ensuring that the range flags were properly positioned to help shooters read wind conditions across the extended distances. The flags served as crucial indicators for long-range shooting, showing how air currents behaved at different points along the bullet's path. She moved from position to position with the efficiency of someone who'd performed this task countless times, making minor adjustments and noting conditions that might affect accuracy throughout the day. The range began to fill with other shooters. As the morning progressed, Lisa Chun arrived to open the equipment rental counter, followed by several members of the local shooting club who had reserved time for practice sessions. The atmosphere was typically friendly among the regular community, people who shared a common interest in precision and respected each other's dedication to the craft, regardless of their equipment or experience level. Tony Russo, the range safety officer, made his rounds checking certifications and ensuring everyone understood the day's safety protocols. At 45, he'd seen enough accidents to never take safety procedures lightly, but he also recognized genuine competence when he saw it. His interactions with Elena were brief and professional, the kind of acknowledgement between people who understood their roles and executed them without unnecessary conversation. Jake noticed Elena as she worked near the 1,000-yard line, setting up wind indicators that would help shooters gauge conditions for their longer attempts. He nudged Brad and gestured in her direction with the kind of casual dismissiveness that suggested he'd already made his assessment of her capabilities based purely on appearance. "Look at that," Jake said, loud enough to carry across the firing line. Range employees got herself a rifle. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Probably thinks she can play with the big boys. His tone carried the condescending amusement of someone who'd never considered that experience might come in packages that didn't match his expectations. Brad chuckled as he assembled his spotting scope, a device that cost more than most people's monthly salary and could magnify distant targets with crystalline clarity. "That scope's older than my truck. Bet she's never shot past 100 yards in her life." His comment drew attention from other shooters, some of whom glanced over at Elena with mild curiosity, others who seemed uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. Elena showed no indication that she'd heard the comments. She continued her work with the same steady focus, adjusting a flag that had been twisted by the morning breeze, checking the stability of a target frame, making the small corrections. That ensured safety and accuracy for everyone who would use the range throughout the day. Her movements remained efficient and purposeful, suggesting someone more concerned with the task at hand than with the opinions of strangers. The extended range at Precision Point was genuinely impressive, stretching across the valley floor toward distant ridgelines that created natural backstops for even the longest shots. Steel targets were positioned at various distances, from the relatively close 500 yards out to the extreme ranges that challenged even military-trained marksmen. The 2-3-mile target was barely visible as a speck against the far mountainside, requiring spotting scopes to confirm hits and electronic scoring systems to register impacts accurately. Jake finished assembling his competition rifle, a precision instrument that represented the cutting edge of civilian marksmanship technology. The weapon incorporated advanced materials, computer-calculated ballistics, and optics that could compensate for everything from atmospheric pressure to the Earth's rotation. He'd spent considerable time and money perfecting his setup for various distances and conditions, and his equipment reflected both his seriousness about the sport and his financial investment in maintaining his competitive edge. Other shooters were setting up their own positions, some working alone with quiet concentration, others in small groups discussing technique and sharing observations about wind conditions. The atmosphere on most mornings was collegial, people united by their appreciation for precision shooting and willing to help each other improve their skills, regardless of experience level or equipment quality. Elena finished her work with the flags and began walking back toward the main facility, her canvas bag still slung over her shoulder, her simple rifle held with the casual competence of someone completely comfortable with the weapon. She moved at the same steady pace she'd maintained throughout the morning, showing no hurry to prove anything to anyone or to escape the attention that had begun to focus on her presence. Marcus Webb, a regular who'd been shooting at Precision Point for years, watched the interaction developing with growing discomfort. He'd seen Elena working around the range for months, always professional, always competent in her duties, but he'd never seen her shoot. Still, something about Jake's tone bothered him. The assumption that age and appearance told the complete story about someone's capabilities. As Elena passed near the shooting positions where Jake and Brad were setting up, Jake raised his voice. Again, this time directing his comments toward her rather than just about her. "Hey, range lady," he called out, his tone carrying false friendliness that barely concealed mockery. "You ever actually shoot that antique, or is it just for show?" Elena stopped and turned to face him, her expression neutral but attentive. When she spoke, her voice was clear and carried easily across the distance between them, though she didn't raise it above conversational level. "I shoot when the situation calls for it." Her response was simple, direct, and gave away nothing about her experience or capabilities. Brad joined the conversation with a grin that suggested he was enjoying the entertainment. "What's the longest shot you've ever made?" "And I'm talking about actually hitting something, not just sending rounds." "Downrange." His question carried the implication that he expected either an admission of limited experience or an obviously inflated claim that he could then ridicule. The question hung in the air between them, drawing attention from other shooters who'd begun to notice the developing confrontation. Some looked uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Others seemed curious about how Elena would respond to the obvious challenge. The morning had taken on a different atmosphere, the collegial environment shifting towards something more confrontational. Elena considered the question for a moment, her eyes moving briefly toward the distant targets that marked the extreme ranges available at Precision Point. When she answered, her tone remained matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing weather conditions rather than making a claim about marksmanship capabilities. "Distance depends on what needs to be hit and why." Her response only seemed to encourage Jake's amusement. He exchanged a look with Brad that suggested they were both thinking the same thing, that they'd encountered someone trying to sound mysterious to cover up limited actual experience. Jake's competitive nature and his comfort with being the center of attention made him push the interaction further. "Tell you what," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly across the range and drawing the attention of everyone within earshot. "I'll make this interesting. See that steel plate way out there?" He pointed toward the 2-3-mile target, barely visible against the distant mountainside. "That's an impossible shot for most people, even with the best equipment. I'll bet you $20 you can't even get close to hitting it." Brad immediately joined the wager, his grin widening as he sensed entertainment developing. "Make it 40. That target's barely been hit by anyone all season, and those were people with serious equipment and military training." His comment drew nods from some of the other shooters, who knew the difficulty of the extreme distance shot and the rarity of successful hits. Several other shooters had gathered around, some drawn by curiosity, others by the growing tension of the situation. The atmosphere had shifted completely from the quiet morning routine to something approaching a spectacle. With Elena at the center of attention, she'd given no indication of wanting or seeking. Tony Russo approached the group, his range safety officer instincts alert to the potential for problems when egos and firearms intersected. He'd seen too many situations where showing off led to safety violations or worse, and his job was to ensure that everyone went home uninjured regardless of their skill level or the social dynamics that developed between shooters. Elena looked at the distant target, then at the gathered crowd, then back at Jake with the same calm expression she'd maintained throughout the interaction. When she spoke, her voice remained level and gave away nothing about her internal reaction to the challenge or the attention it had drawn. "What target would you like me to hit?" The simplicity of her question caught Jake off guard for a moment. He'd expected either a refusal to accept the challenge or an attempt to negotiate for easier conditions. Instead, she'd responded as if hitting the distant target was simply a matter of selecting the correct one rather than achieving something bordering on impossible for most shooters. Brad stepped in to clarify the challenge, pointing toward the most distant target visible on the range. The steel plate at 2-3 miles. The one that maybe 3 people have hit all year, and they used equipment worth more than most people's cars. His specification was intended to emphasize the difficulty of what was being proposed and the unlikelihood of success. Elena nodded once, acknowledging the target selection, then surprised everyone by asking a follow-up question that suggested she was seriously considering the attempt, rather than looking for a way to gracefully decline. Any particular part of the plate, or just anywhere on target? Her question drew murmurs from the gathered shooters, some expressing amazement that she was considering the shot seriously, others beginning to wonder if they were witnessing something more significant than a simple challenge between strangers. The 2-3 mile shot was genuinely difficult, requiring not just marksmanship skills but understanding of ballistics, atmospheric conditions, and equipment capabilities that took years to develop. Jake's confidence remained unshaken, bolstered by his knowledge of his own capabilities and his assessment of Elena's equipment and apparent experience level. Anywhere on the plate counts as a hit. But lady, that's a shot that requires serious math, serious equipment, and serious experience. You sure you want to lose money on something impossible? The challenge had drawn the attention of nearly everyone on the range, creating an audience that Elena had never sought, but now found herself performing for. Some faces in the crowd showed skepticism similar to Jake's, others displayed curiosity about what would happen next, and a few reflected discomfort with the entire situation and its potential for embarrassment or worse. Elena shouldered her rifle with the same casual efficiency she'd shown throughout the morning. No additional preparation, no consultation of ballistic charts or weather instruments, no adjustment of her scope beyond a brief check of its mounting. Her movements were economical and confident, suggesting someone completely comfortable with her weapon and her own capabilities. The sight of her preparing to take the shot without any of the extensive preparation that extreme distance shooting typically required drew gasps and nervous laughter from the crowd. Most shooters attempting such a distance would spend considerable time calculating variables, adjusting equipment, and taking practice shots at shorter ranges to verify their setup. Tony Russo stepped forward to ensure safety protocols were being followed, checking that the range was clear downrange and that all safety procedures were in place for the attempt. His professional demeanor remained calm, but his eyes reflected the tension of supervising a situation that had the potential to go wrong in several different ways. Elena's final preparation consisted of a single deep breath and a casual glance toward the wind flag she'd spent the morning positioning. Her reading of conditions appeared to take only seconds, drawing on information she'd gathered through hours of systematic observation rather than last-minute calculations. When she fired, the shot was clean and immediate, without hesitation or second-guessing. The rifle's report echoed across the valley, followed by the expectant silence of people waiting to see the results of an attempt that most considered impossible under the circumstances. The electronic scoring system that monitored the distant target took several seconds to register the impact, long enough for doubt to creep into the minds of those watching. Then the display lit up with unmistakable confirmation of a direct hit, and the delayed sound of metal striking metal reached them across the 2-3 miles of Colorado Valley. The silence that followed was complete and profound, broken only by the wind moving through the flags Elena had so carefully positioned and the distant echo of the impact finally fading into the mountain air around them. The electronic scoring display blinked 3 times in rapid succession, its LED readout cycling through confirmation protocols that most shooters at Precision Point had Never seen activated for the extreme distance targets, the system had been installed specifically to handle shots beyond visual confirmation range, using sensors and timing equipment that could detect impacts across the valley's full span. When the display finally stabilized, it showed not just a hit, but dead center mass on the steel plate that floated like a postage stamp against the far mountainside. Jake Thompson's mouth fell open, his expensive sunglasses sliding down his nose as he stared at the electronic confirmation. The numbers were unmistakable, displaying not only the successful hit, but the precise coordinates of impact, wind speed readings, and trajectory calculations that the system had automatically recorded. His partner Brad Mitchell dropped his spotting scope, the device worth more than most people's monthly salaries, hitting the ground with a dull thud that echoed his stunned disbelief. Marcus Webb, who had been watching the confrontation develop with growing unease, felt his assumptions crumble like sandcastles at high tide. He'd been shooting at precision point for over a decade, had seen military snipers struggle with that same target, had witnessed competition shooters spend hours calculating variables before attempting shots at half that distance. The casual ease with which Elena had shouldered her rifle and fired defied everything he understood about extreme distance marksmanship. Tony Russo's professional composure cracked for the first time in years of range safety supervision. He'd overseen thousands of shooting sessions, had watched expert marksmen work their craft, had even hosted military training exercises that pushed the boundaries of what civilian facilities could accommodate. But he'd never witnessed anyone achieve that level of precision with such minimal preparation, especially not with equipment that appeared to belong in a museum rather than a modern shooting competition. Other shooters began gathering around the electronic display, their conversations dropping to whispers as they processed what they were seeing. The scoring system didn't lie, couldn't be manipulated, and provided detailed analysis that confirmed not just the hit but the remarkable precision of the shot. Several people pulled out their phones to photograph the display, understanding that they were witnessing something extraordinary that most people would never believe without documentation. Elena calmly engaged the safety on her rifle and slung it over her shoulder with the same casual efficiency she'd shown throughout the morning. Her expression remained neutral, giving no indication of surprise at the successful shot or satisfaction at proving her doubters wrong. She appeared to regard the entire situation as nothing more than a brief interruption to her normal routine, something to be completed efficiently before returning to more important matters. Lisa Chen emerged from the equipment rental counter, drawn by the growing crowd and the unusual level of excitement that had developed around the long-range shooting positions. As a range employee, she'd become accustomed to the rhythms of the facility, the typical interactions between competitive shooters, and the occasional tensions that developed when egos and firearms intersected. But the atmosphere she encountered felt different, charged with an energy that suggested something significant had just occurred. The distant ping of metal on metal finally reached them, the sound traveling across 2-3 miles of Colorado Valley to provide auditory confirmation of what the electronic systems had already recorded. The delay between the shot and the sound created an eerie punctuation to the silence that had settled over the shooting positions, a reminder of the vast distance that Elena's bullet had traveled with deadly accuracy. Jake struggled to find words, his usual confidence shattered by witnessing something that contradicted everything he believed about marksmanship, equipment, and the relationship between age and capability. His expensive rifle, with its computer-calculated ballistics and precision optics, suddenly felt inadequate in comparison to the simple, well-maintained weapon that Elena carried with such casual competence. Brad retrieved his spotting scope from where it had fallen, checking for damage while trying to process what he'd just witnessed. Through years of competitive shooting, he'd developed respect for precision, marksmanship, and understood the complexity of variables that affected long-distance accuracy. Wind speed, atmospheric pressure, temperature gradients, bullet drop, and dozens of other factors required careful calculation and compensation for shots at such extreme ranges. The betting money that had seemed like easy profit moments before now felt like a monument to their miscalculation. $20 from Jake, $40 from Brad. Small amounts that had been offered in jest, but now represented their public acknowledgement of a fundamental error in judgment. Elena showed no interest in collecting the wager, suggesting that proving her point had been more important than winning money from strangers. Other shooters began approaching Elena with questions. Their attitudes shifted dramatically from the casual dismissal they'd observed earlier to genuine curiosity about her background and experience. The transformation in their behavior was striking, demonstrating how quickly assumptions could be overturned when confronted with undeniable evidence of capability that exceeded expectations. David Park, president of the local shooting club, had arrived at the range in time to witness the shot and its aftermath. His organization regularly hosted competitions and training events, bringing together shooters from across the region to test their skills against challenging courses and demanding standards. In all his years of involvement with precision marksmanship, he'd rarely seen anything that compared to what Elena had just accomplished. The questions began tentatively, shooters approaching Elena with the respectful curiosity typically reserved for recognized experts in specialized fields. Where had she learned to shoot with such precision? What was her background in marksmanship? How had she calculated the ballistic solution so quickly without visible reference to charts or instruments? Her responses were brief and professional, acknowledging their interest without providing detailed explanations of her experience or training. Elena's rifle, which had drawn dismissive comments about its age and simplicity, now attracted attention for entirely different reasons. Experienced shooters recognized quality when they saw it, understanding that functionality mattered more than appearance, that a well-maintained weapon in skilled hands could outperform the most expensive equipment when wielded by someone who truly understood their craft. The morning's shooting schedule had been disrupted by the impromptu demonstration, but nobody seemed concerned about the delay. The witness to something genuinely extraordinary took precedence over planned practice sessions and conversations, buzzed with excitement as people tried to understand what they'd just observed and place it in context with their own experience and knowledge. Tony Russo began the process of documenting the shot for range records, understanding that the 2-3-mile hit would become part of precision points history and likely attract attention from serious marksmen across the region. The facility maintained detailed logs of exceptional achievements, both for safety documentation and for the legitimate pride that came from hosting remarkable demonstrations of marksmanship skill. Word of the shot began spreading beyond the immediate witnesses, carried by phone calls and text messages to friends and fellow shooters who would want to know that something special had occurred at Precision Point. The shooting community was relatively small and tightly connected, with news of exceptional achievements traveling quickly through networks of enthusiasts who appreciated precision and skill regardless of where they encountered it. Elena accepted the attention with the same calm demeanor she'd maintained throughout the morning, answering questions when directly asked, but showing no interest in elaborating on her background or seeking additional challenges to further demonstrate her capabilities. Her behavior suggested someone accustomed to competence being recognized eventually, even if initial impressions had been less favorable. Jake's expensive equipment suddenly felt like a burden rather than an advantage, its complexity and cost highlighting his dependence on technology to compensate for limitations in fundamental skills. The contrast with Elena's simple, well-maintained rifle was stark and uncomfortable, forcing him to reconsider assumptions about the relationship between equipment quality and shooting capability. The electronic scoring system continued displaying the confirmed hit, its LED readout serving as irrefutable evidence that would prevent anyone from later questioning what had occurred. The precision of the impact coordinates, recorded automatically by sensors that measured bullet placement to within inches at extreme distance, eliminated any possibility that luck rather than skill had been responsible for the successful shot. Conversations around the range had shifted from the typical discussions of equipment and technique to speculation about Elena's background and experience. Her age, combined with the casual efficiency of her shooting, suggested military or law enforcement training at a level that few civilians ever achieved. The precision of her shot indicated not just natural talent, but extensive practice and professional instruction that went far beyond recreational shooting. Brad found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about competitive shooting and the factors that determine success at extreme distances. His expensive optics and precision ammunition suddenly seemed less important than the fundamental skills that Elena had demonstrated. The ability to read conditions, calculate solutions, and execute shots with confidence that came from deep understanding, rather than technological assistance. Other ranges in the area would soon hear about the 2-3 mile shot, adding to Precision Point's reputation for hosting exceptional marksmanship and attracting shooters who pushed the boundaries of what civilian facilities could accommodate. The achievement would become part of local shooting folklore, discussed and debated by people who understood the difficulty of what Elena had accomplished. The morning sun had climbed higher, burning off the last of the mist that had clung to the valley peaks when the first shooters arrived. The clear air and stable conditions that Elena had read so accurately would soon give way to the thermal currents and wind shifts that made extreme distance shooting more challenging as the day progressed. Her timing had been perfect, taking advantage of optimal conditions that existed only briefly each morning. Elena began walking back toward the main facility, her canvas bag still slung over her shoulder, her simple rifle carried with the same casual competence she'd shown throughout the morning. The crowd that had gathered to witness her shot began to disperse, but conversations continued as people processed what they'd seen and tried to understand its implications for their own understanding of marksmanship and capability. The betting money remained uncollected, Jake and Brad still too stunned to remember their wager or attempt to settle accounts. The $40 they'd offered in jest now seemed like a pittance in exchange for the lesson they'd received about assumptions, respect, and the danger of underestimating people based on superficial impressions. Marcus Webb followed Elena at a respectful distance, his curiosity about her background intensified by what he'd witnessed. As a regular at Precision Point, he'd developed relationships with most of the facility's frequent users and staff, but Elena remained an enigma despite months of observing her work around the range. Her demonstration had only deepened the mystery, while demanding a complete revision of his assumptions about her role and capabilities. The range gradually returned to its normal rhythm as shooters resumed their planned practice sessions, but the atmosphere remained charged with excitement over what had occurred. Conversations would return repeatedly to Elena's shot throughout the day, as people tried to understand how someone could achieve such precision with such minimal preparation and apparently simple equipment. Tony Russo made additional notes in the range log, documenting not just the successful hit, but the conditions under which it had been achieved, and the reaction it had generated among witnesses. His professional responsibilities included maintaining accurate records of significant events, both for safety purposes and for the historical documentation that serious shooting facilities maintained as part of their operational protocols. Electronic scoring system finally reset to its standby mode, clearing the display of Elena's achievement, but retaining the data in its memory banks, where it would remain as permanent documentation of what had occurred. The technology that had confirmed the impossible shot would preserve the details for anyone who might later question whether such precision was actually possible under the circumstances. Elena reached the main facility building, her steady pace unchanged by the attention she'd received or the demonstration she'd provided. Her behavior suggested someone returning to normal routine after handling a minor interruption, giving no indication that she considered the 2-3 mile shot to be particularly remarkable or worthy of extended discussion. The morning had transformed from routine practice into something extraordinary, changing assumptions and challenging beliefs about capability, age, and the relationship between equipment and skill. Elena's demonstration had provided lessons that extended far beyond marksmanship, touching on respect, judgment, and the danger of making assumptions based on incomplete information. Other shooters would spend the rest of the day discussing what they'd witnessed, trying to understand the technical aspects of Elena's shot and place it in context with their own experience and knowledge. The conversations would continue long. After they left Precision Point, carrying the story to other ranges and shooting communities across the region. The valley had returned to its normal quiet, with only the occasional sound of gunfire from the active shooting positions breaking the mountain silence. But something had changed in the atmosphere at Precision Point, a recognition that exceptional capability could exist in unexpected packages and that respect should be offered more freely than it often was in competitive environments. The gravel crunched under heavy tires as a black pickup truck pulled into the parking area with purposeful speed. Colonel Patricia Hayes stepped out before the engine had fully settled, her movements carrying the crisp efficiency of someone accustomed to command situations and unexpected developments. At 52, she maintained the bearing of her Marine Corps days, silver haircut regulation short, wearing civilian clothes that couldn't quite hide the military precision in her posture and stride. Hayes owned Precision Point Shooting Range, having purchased the facility upon her retirement from active duty, where she'd served as a sniper instructor for some of the military's most elite units. Her reputation in marksmanship circles extended far beyond Colorado, built on decades of training shooters who went on to serve in the most demanding situations the military could devise. She'd received the call about Elena's shot while reviewing quarterly reports in her home office, and the description of what had allegedly occurred demanded personal investigation. The cluster of shooters still gathered near the electronic scoring display told her immediately that something significant had happened. Their animated conversations and the repeated glances toward the distant target confirmed that the phone call she'd received hadn't been exaggerated or mistaken. Hayes had overseen too many exceptional shots during her military career to dismiss remarkable marksmanship, but a 2.3-mile hit with minimal preparation, using apparently basic equipment, struck her as worthy of personal attention. Tony Russo spotted her approach and immediately moved to intercept, his range safety officer instincts recognizing the need to brief his employer on the morning's developments before she encountered the full story through multiple conflicting accounts from excited witnesses. His professional relationship with Hayes had developed over several years of managing the facility together, and he understood her preference for clear, factual reports over speculation and enthusiasm. Hayes listened to Tony's account with the focused attention she'd perfected during military briefings, asking specific questions about timing, conditions, and witness reliability while her eyes tracked across the scene to evaluate the situation independently. Her experience with exceptional marksmanship allowed her to distinguish between lucky shots and genuine skill, and Tony's description suggested something that fell clearly into the latter category. Elena had reached the equipment storage area behind the main building, where she'd been methodically organizing the morning's range maintenance supplies into their designated locations. Her routine remained unchanged by the attention her shot had generated, suggesting someone accustomed to extraordinary performance being recognized, eventually but not requiring immediate validation or discussion to confirm her own sense of accomplishment. Hayes approached Elena directly, bypassing the crowd of still excited witnesses, who remained focused on the electronic display and their ongoing discussions of what they'd observed. Her military background had taught her to seek primary sources for information whenever possible, especially when evaluating claims that pushed the boundaries of what seemed technically feasible under given circumstances. The conversation between Hayes and Elena was quiet and brief, conducted with the professional courtesy of people recognizing competence in each other, without need for elaborate social protocols or extended explanations. Hayes asked several specific questions about wind conditions, equipment specifications, and Elena's assessment of the shot difficulty, receiving answers that demonstrated both technical knowledge and practical experience at levels that confirmed the reports she'd received. Jake Thompson and Brad Mitchell had remained near the scoring display, still processing the implications of what they'd witnessed and trying to reconcile Elena's demonstration with their preconceptions about age, equipment, and marksmanship capability. Their expensive gear suddenly felt inadequate in comparison to the simple effectiveness Elena had shown, forcing them to reconsider fundamental assumptions about the relationship between technology and skill. Other shooters began approaching Hayes with questions about Elena's background, recognizing the range owner's military experience and hoping for context that would help them understand what they'd witnessed. Hayes deflected most inquiries with diplomatic non-answers, suggesting that Elena's privacy deserved respect and that her demonstration spoke for itself without requiring additional explanation or verification. Marcus Webb had been observing the developing situation with growing fascination, understanding that Elena's casual presence around precision point for months had concealed capabilities that few civilian shooters could match. His regular visits to the range had familiarized him with most of the facility's frequent users and their approximate skill levels, but Elena had remained an unknown quantity despite her consistent presence during maintenance and preparation activities. Lisa Chun emerged from the main building carrying a clipboard and looking for Hayes to discuss some administrative matters, but quickly recognized that her employer's attention was focused on more immediate concerns related to the morning's extraordinary events. The unusual level of excitement among the range users and the continued focus on the distant target display made it clear that normal business would need to wait until the situation stabilized. Hayes walked toward the long-range shooting positions, her trained eye automatically evaluating wind conditions, target visibility, and the technical challenges that Elena had overcome with her demonstration. Her military experience included both personal marksmanship at extreme distances and instruction of others attempting similar shots, giving her the expertise necessary to fully appreciate the precision that had been displayed. The electronic scoring system's memory banks contained detailed records of Elena's shot, including trajectory analysis, impact coordinates, and environmental readings that Hayes could access through her administrative privileges. The data confirmed not just the successful hit, but the remarkable accuracy that had placed the bullet dead center on a target, barely visible to the naked eye, across 2-3 miles of Colorado Valley. David Park had been making phone calls to other members of the shooting club, sharing news of Elena's demonstration with people who would appreciate the technical achievement and might want to witness any follow-up attempts. The local marksmanship community was small enough that exceptional performances became shared experiences, discussed and analyzed by people who understood the difficulty of what had been accomplished. Hayes reviewed the stored data with the analytical approach she'd developed during years of evaluating shooter performance and identifying areas for improvement or recognition. Elena's shot showed technical precision that exceeded most military standards for extreme distance marksmanship, achieved with minimal preparation time and apparently basic equipment that suggested either exceptional natural ability or extensive professional training. The morning crowd had begun to thin as some shooters departed for other commitments, but core group remained focused on understanding what they'd witnessed and its implications for their own approach to precision shooting. Conversations continued to circle around Elena's background, her apparent lack of concern about the attention she'd generated, and the casual efficiency with which she'd achieved something most considered virtually impossible. Elena completed her equipment organization and began walking back toward the main facility, her canvas bag now containing only personal items and her simple rifle still slung over her shoulder with the same casual competence she'd shown throughout the morning. Her behavior suggested someone ready to conclude her business at Precision Point and move on to other activities, giving no indication of interest in extended discussion or demonstration of additional capabilities. Hayes intercepted Elena's path with the professional courtesy of someone requesting a private conversation rather than demanding answers or explanations. Their discussion was conducted away from the remaining witnesses, allowing for honest evaluation of the morning's events, without the pressure of public attention or the need to maintain appearances for curious observers. The conversation revealed information that began to explain Elena's remarkable demonstration, though Hayes kept the details private out of respect for Elena's obvious preference for anonymity and her apparent lack of interest in public recognition. The exchange confirmed Hayes' growing suspicions about Elena's background and experience, providing context that placed the morning's shot in a different category than simple recreational marksmanship. Jake began approaching other shooters with offers to buy their silence about what they'd witnessed, apparently concerned that word of Elena's demonstration might somehow reflect poorly on his own reputation or competitive standing. His approach met with polite refusals and some confused looks from people who saw no reason to conceal remarkable marksmanship or protect Jake's ego from the consequences of his earlier assumptions. Brad had begun disassembling his equipment with less enthusiasm than he'd shown during setup, the morning's events having dampened his confidence in both his gear and his understanding of what constituted advanced marksmanship capability. His expensive optics and precision ammunition suddenly seemed less important than the fundamental skills that Elena had demonstrated with such casual effectiveness. The range gradually returned to normal operations as remaining shooters resumed their planned practice sessions, though conversations continued to reference Elena's shot and its implications for understanding the relationship between equipment, experience, and performance. The demonstration had provided lessons that extended beyond technical marksmanship into broader questions of assumption, respect, and the danger of judging capability based on superficial appearance. Hayes completed her evaluation of the morning's events and reached conclusions that she kept private, though her subsequent treatment of Elena reflected recognition of capabilities that extended far beyond what most range users possessed. Their professional interaction suggested mutual respect between people who understood precision shooting at levels that few civilians ever achieved. Tony Russo updated the range's official records with documentation of Elena's achievement, understanding that the 2-3-mile hit would become part of Precision Point's history and might attract attention from serious marksmen seeking to test themselves against similar challenges. His administrative responsibilities included maintaining accurate logs of exceptional performances, both for safety documentation and for the legitimate pride that came from hosting remarkable demonstrations. The electronic scoring system had been reset to standby mode, but the data from Elena's shot remained permanently stored in memory banks that preserve details for future reference or analysis. The technology that had confirmed the impossible achievement would maintain the record as evidence of what could be accomplished when skill, experience, and optimal conditions combined in extraordinary ways. Other ranges in the region would soon hear about the demonstration through the informal networks that connected serious shooting facilities and their users. Elena's achievement would add to Precision Point's reputation for attracting exceptional marksmen and providing the facilities necessary for extreme distance challenges that push the boundaries of civilian marksmanship capability. Elena reached her pickup truck, an aging but well-maintained vehicle that reflected the same practical approach to equipment that characterized her rifle and shooting technique. Her departure was as understated as her arrival had been, giving no indication that she considered the morning's events to be particularly remarkable or worthy of extended discussion with the people who'd witnessed her demonstration. Hayes watched Elena's truck disappear down the access road, her military experience allowing her to recognize exceptional capability even when it came in unexpected packages, and preferred to remain anonymous. The morning had provided confirmation of suspicions she'd been developing about Elena's background, though respect for privacy prevented her from sharing that information with curious witnesses who remained focused on understanding what they'd seen. The remaining shooters began departing for other commitments, carrying with them stories of Elena's demonstration that would be shared with friends and fellow marksmen across the region. The accounts would grow in detail and speculation, with each telling, but the core facts would remain consistent. An apparently ordinary woman had achieved something extraordinary, with minimal fuss and maximum precision. Conversations at Precision Point would return to Elena's shot repeatedly in coming weeks, as regular users tried to understand the technical aspects of what they'd witnessed and place it in context with their own experience and knowledge. The demonstration had challenged assumptions about age, equipment, and capability while providing a masterclass in precision shooting that few would ever forget. The valley returned to its normal quiet as the last of the morning shooters departed, leaving only the maintenance crew and Hayes to secure the facility for the midday break. But something had changed in the atmosphere at Precision Point, a recognition that exceptional skill could exist in unexpected forms, and that respect should be offered more readily than it often was in competitive environments. Hayes made several phone calls from her office, contacting people in military and law enforcement circles who might have information about Elena's background or confirmation of her suspicions about the morning's demonstration. The conversations were brief and professional, conducted with the discretion that such inquiries required when dealing with potentially sensitive information about people who preferred to maintain their privacy. The search for information would reveal details that explained Elena's remarkable capability while raising additional questions about why someone with such extraordinary skills was working maintenance at a civilian shooting range. Hayes kept her discoveries private, understanding that Elena's anonymity was clearly intentional and deserved protection regardless of her background or achievements. Documents and records that Hayes accessed through her military connections painted a picture of service and achievement that placed Elena's morning demonstration in an entirely different context. The casual precision she'd shown represented just a glimpse of capabilities developed through training and experience that few people ever received or survived to apply in civilian settings. The phone calls also revealed information about Elena's current circumstances and her apparent preference for quiet retirement from public attention or professional recognition. Hayes respected that choice while ensuring that Elena would be treated with appropriate courtesy during any future visits to Precision Point, regardless of whether other users understood the reasons for such consideration. Evening approached, with Hayes still processing the implications of Elena's demonstration and the information she'd gathered about the woman who'd achieved something extraordinary with such casual efficiency. The morning had provided lessons about assumptions, respect, and the complex relationship between public recognition and personal preference for privacy that would influence her approach to managing similar situations in the future. 3 days later, Hayes found herself reviewing a classified file that had been digitally transmitted through secure military channels, its contents explaining everything about Elena Martinez, while raising profound questions about how someone with such extraordinary credentials had ended up working maintenance at a civilian shooting range in Colorado. The document bore stamps and classifications that indicated access restricted to command levels Hayes had never personally achieved, even during her most senior assignments. Elena Martinez, according to the file, had served 26 years in roles that officially didn't exist, working with units whose designations were redacted even in documents that Hayes was barely cleared to receive. Her service record included deployments to locations that weren't mentioned in public reports, achievements that had been classified at levels requiring presidential authorization to declassify, and commendations that would never be displayed in any public ceremony or acknowledged in any official military history. The shooting demonstration that had stunned witnesses at Precision Point represented just a fraction of capabilities that Elena had developed through training programs that pushed human performance to theoretical limits. Her longest confirmed shot, according to carefully redacted records, had been achieved under combat conditions at a distance that made the 2.3-mile range. Demonstration seemed like basic qualification shooting in comparison to what she'd accomplished when lives depended on her precision. Hayes closed the file and secured it according to protocols that she'd learned during her own military service, understanding that the information she'd received was provided as professional courtesy rather than official disclosure. Elena's privacy was protected by classifications that would remain in effect long after both women had passed away, ensuring that her service record would never become public knowledge, regardless of what achievements she might demonstrate in civilian settings. The decision to share Elena's background with Jake Thompson and Brad Mitchell required careful consideration of competing factors, including respect for Elena's privacy, the educational value of correcting their misconceptions, and the broader implications for how assumptions and respect intersected in competitive shooting environments. Hayes ultimately concluded that both men deserved to understand the magnitude of their error, while Elena deserved protection from unwanted attention or recognition. Jake had spent the intervening days researching extreme distance shooting techniques and equipment modifications, apparently convinced that Elena's success had resulted from some technical advantage that he could identify and replicate. His online searches and equipment purchases revealed someone struggling to accept that skill rather than technology had been the determining factor in Elena's demonstration, despite clear evidence that her simple rifle and basic scope had been the only tools involved. Brad had taken a different approach, reaching out to other competitive shooters and military veterans in attempts to identify Elena or gather information about her background through informal networks. His inquiries had yielded no useful information, while generating curiosity about why he was seeking details about an apparently ordinary woman who'd made an exceptional shot at a Colorado shooting range. Hayes invited both men to return to Precision Point for a private conversation, framing the meeting as an opportunity to discuss the technical aspects of Elena's demonstration and its implications for their own understanding of marksmanship principles. Neither Jake nor Brad understood that they were about to receive information that would fundamentally alter their perspective on respect, assumptions, and the relationship between public recognition and private achievement. The meeting took place in Hayes' office, a space decorated with military memorabilia and photographs that hinted at her own exceptional career without providing details about classified operations or sensitive assignments. Jake and Brad arrived separately but nearly simultaneously, both showing signs of continued preoccupation with Elena's shot and its challenge to their understanding of what constituted advanced marksmanship capability. Hayes began the conversation by establishing ground rules about confidentiality and respect, making it clear that any information shared during their discussion was to remain private and was being provided solely for educational purposes. She emphasized that Elena's privacy was paramount and that her demonstration had been a personal choice rather than a seeking of recognition or validation from competitive shooting communities. The revelation began with general context about military marksmanship training and the levels of skill that could be achieved through specialized programs that most people never encountered. Hayes explained how certain military roles required precision that exceeded anything found in civilian competitive shooting, describing training regimens and performance standards that pushed human capability to theoretical limits under stress conditions that recreational shooters never experienced. Jake interrupted with questions about equipment and technology, still focused on identifying technical factors that could explain Elena's casual precision. Hayes patiently explained that advanced military marksmanship relied primarily on fundamental skills rather than specialized equipment, though she avoided specific details about programs or capabilities that remained classified decades after Elena's service had concluded. The conversation shifted to Elena's actual background as Hayes carefully shared information that had been cleared for limited disclosure. Elena Martinez had served in units that trained the military's most elite marksmen, developing skills that placed her among the most capable shooters in military history. Her service record included achievements that would have guaranteed recognition and promotion in conventional units, but her assignments had been in roles where recognition was impossible and achievement was measured by mission success rather than public acknowledgement. Brad's expression changed as he began to grasp the implications of what Hayes was revealing. Elena wasn't just an exceptional civilian shooter who'd made a lucky shot. She was someone whose professional background included training and achievements that placed her capabilities far beyond anything found in competitive shooting circles. Her casual demonstration had represented just a fraction of skills developed through decades of specialized training and real-world application. Hayes continued with carefully chosen details about Elena's post-military life, explaining that her current circumstances were the result of personal choices rather than professional limitations or lack of opportunities. Elena had deliberately chosen anonymity and simple work over the recognition and positions that her background could have secured, preferring privacy to the attention that would have accompanied public acknowledgement of her achievements. The 2-3-mile shot that had stunned witnesses at Precision Point represented Elena's response to disrespectful treatment rather than an attempt to showcase her capabilities. Hayes emphasized that Elena had no interest in competitive shooting or public recognition, making her demonstration a lesson about respect rather than a seeking of validation or advancement in civilian marksmanship circles. Jake struggled to process the information, his competitive mindset having difficulty accepting that someone with Elena's capabilities would choose maintenance work over positions that could have provided recognition and financial rewards. Hayes explained that not everyone measured success through public achievement or competitive rankings, and that Elena's choices reflected values that prioritized privacy and peaceful retirement over continued professional advancement. The conversation turned to the implications of Jake and Brad's initial behavior toward Elena, with Hayes making it clear that their assumptions and disrespectful treatment had been directed toward someone whose service and achievements exceeded anything they would ever accomplish in competitive shooting. Their mockery had targeted a person whose contributions to national security remained classified, but had been recognized at the highest levels of military command. Brad asked about appropriate responses to their error, apparently seeking ways to apologize or make amends for their behavior toward Elena. Hayes advised that the best response would be changed behavior in future interactions, treating all people with respect regardless of their apparent circumstances or equipment, since assumptions about capability based on superficial observations had proven dangerously unreliable. The discussion of consequences was brief but significant. Hayes explained that their behavior at Precision Point had demonstrated attitudes that were incompatible with the respectful environment she wanted to maintain at her facility. Jake and Brad were welcome to continue using the range, but any future incidents of disrespectful behavior toward other users would result in permanent banishment from the facility. Hayes also suggested that both men could benefit from reassessing their approach to competitive shooting and their interactions with other marksmen. Their focus on equipment and technology, while not inherently wrong, had blinded them to fundamental principles of respect and recognition that Elena's demonstration had highlighted. Success in marksmanship, like success in life, required understanding that capability could exist in unexpected forms and deserved acknowledgement regardless of its packaging. The meeting concluded with Hayes emphasizing that Elena's story was to remain confidential, and that any attempts to seek her out or publicize her background would be met with serious consequences. Elena had earned her privacy through service that couldn't be fully disclosed, and protecting that privacy was both a matter of respect and a recognition of sacrifices that had been made on behalf of people who would never know the details of her contributions. Jake and Brad left the meeting with fundamentally altered perspectives on assumptions, respect, and the relationship between appearance and capability. Their expensive equipment and competitive achievements suddenly seemed less significant in comparison to Elena's quiet competence and her choice to prioritize privacy over recognition or advancement in civilian shooting circles. Word of Elena's background, though not its specific details, began circulating quietly through Precision Point's regular user community. Hayes shared general information about Elena's military service and exceptional qualifications with trusted members of her shooting community, ensuring that future interactions would be conducted with appropriate respect while maintaining the privacy that Elena clearly valued. The range's atmosphere changed subtly over the following weeks, with users showing greater consideration for people whose backgrounds and capabilities might not be immediately apparent. Elena's demonstration had provided a powerful lesson about assumptions and respect that influenced behavior long after the specific details of her shot had faded from immediate memory. Elena continued her maintenance work at Precision Point with the same quiet efficiency she'd always shown, though her interactions with range users became more respectful and professional. People who had previously overlooked her presence now acknowledged her contributions to the facility's operation and sought her observations about wind conditions and shooting techniques with genuine interest rather than condescending curiosity. Hayes ensured that Elena's privacy was protected while her contributions to range operations were appropriately valued. Elena's knowledge of ballistics, weather conditions, and marksmanship principles proved valuable for training programs and safety protocols, though she showed no interest in formal instruction roles or public recognition of her expertise. The shooting community that used Precision Point developed a culture of respect that extended beyond Elena's specific situation to encompass all interactions between users, regardless of their apparent experience levels or equipment quality. Her demonstration had highlighted the danger of assumptions, while providing a positive example of how competence and dignity could coexist without requiring public recognition or competitive validation. Months later, Jake and Brad had become regular users of Precision Point again, but their behavior reflected the lessons they'd learned about respect and assumptions. Their interactions with other shooters showed greater consideration for people whose backgrounds might not be immediately apparent, and their focus had shifted from equipment comparison to fundamental skill development and respectful community building. Elena's 3-mile shot became part of Precision Point's informal history, discussed respectfully among users who understood its significance while respecting the privacy of the person who'd achieved it. The demonstration served as a reminder that exceptional capability could exist in unexpected forms, and that respect should be offered freely rather than withheld, until someone proved they deserved acknowledgement. Hayes occasionally received inquiries from other military personnel or shooting facilities about Elena's background, but she consistently declined to provide information beyond general confirmation that Elena was a valued member of the Precision Point community. Elena's privacy remained protected by the same discretion that had characterized her military service, ensuring that her civilian life could continue without unwanted attention or pressure to accept recognition she didn't seek. The lessons learned from Elena's demonstration extended far beyond the specific incident, influencing how assumptions and respect intersected in competitive environments throughout the regional shooting community. Her story, though never fully told, became a cautionary tale about the danger of judging people based on superficial observations and the importance of treating everyone with dignity regardless of their apparent circumstances. Elena Martinez continued her quiet retirement, working maintenance at Precision Point and occasionally providing guidance to shooters who sought her advice with appropriate respect and recognition of her knowledge. Her extraordinary capabilities remained largely private, acknowledged by those who needed to know while protected from the attention and recognition that she had deliberately chosen to avoid through her transition from military service to civilian. Anonymity. The morning of her impossible shot had provided lessons that extended far beyond marksmanship technique, touching on fundamental questions of respect, dignity, and the complex relationship between public achievement and private satisfaction. Elena's demonstration had reminded everyone present that true competence spoke for itself when given the opportunity, and that assumptions about capability based on appearance or equipment could be dangerously misleading when dealing with people whose backgrounds included training and experience that transcended civilian understanding. 6 months after Elena's demonstration, Precision Point Shooting Range had evolved into something more than a facility for recreational marksmanship. Word of the extraordinary shot had spread through careful, respectful channels throughout the mountain shooting community, attracting visitors who came not seeking spectacle, but hoping to learn from an environment where exceptional skill was recognized and honored without exploitation or sensationalism. Elena arrived at the range each morning with the same quiet consistency she'd maintained since the day her single shot had changed everything. Her routine remained unchanged, checking equipment, positioning flags, and ensuring that the facility operated safely for all users regardless of their experience levels or capabilities. The difference lay not in her behavior, but in how others responded to her presence and expertise. Young shooters now approached Elena with genuine respect, seeking guidance about wind reading and ballistic calculations rather than assuming her age or equipment indicated limitations. She responded to their questions with patient instruction, sharing technical knowledge that helped them understand the complexity of precision shooting, while never revealing the depth of experience that informed her teachings. Marcus Webb had become an informal student of Elena's, arriving early to observe her preparation, routines, and occasionally asking questions about technique and equipment maintenance. Their conversations were brief and practical, focused on specific aspects of marksmanship rather than personal history or background details that Elena clearly preferred to keep private. The electronic scoring system had been upgraded with additional memory capacity to preserve records of exceptional achievements. Though Elena's 2 3-mile shot remained the standard by which all other long-distance attempts were measured, Hayes had ensured that the documentation was thorough and permanent, creating an objective record that would prevent future questioning of what had occurred while respecting Elena's preference for anonymity. Tony Russo's approach to range safety had been influenced by Elena's demonstration, incorporating lessons about respect and assumption into his interactions with all users. He developed training programs that emphasized the importance of treating every person with dignity, regardless of their apparent experience level, using Elena's story as an example without violating her privacy or revealing details she wanted protected. The facility's reputation had grown throughout Colorado and neighboring states, attracting serious marksmen who understood that Precision Point offered something unique in the shooting world. The combination of excellent facilities, respectful atmosphere, and the knowledge that extraordinary capability was recognized and honored drew people seeking environments where skill development could occur without the competitive tensions that characterize some shooting communities. Elena's influence extended beyond marksmanship instruction to broader questions of how communities could foster excellence while maintaining inclusive, respectful environments. Her demonstration had proven that assumptions about capability based on superficial observations were unreliable and potentially harmful to community building and mutual respect. Hayes often reflected on the morning when Elena's shot had changed the atmosphere at Precision Point, understanding that the incident had provided lessons about leadership, respect, and recognition that applied far beyond shooting sports. The careful balance between honoring achievement and protecting privacy had become a model for how exceptional performance could be celebrated, without violating personal boundaries or exploiting individuals for community benefit. David Park's shooting club had adopted new protocols for welcoming members and visitors, emphasizing respect and inclusion over competitive hierarchy or equipment comparison. Elena's story, though never told in complete detail, had influenced their understanding of how talent could exist in unexpected forms and how assumptions could damage community relationships and learning opportunities. Training programs at Precision Point now included discussions of respect, assumption, and the importance of recognizing that every person carried experiences and capabilities that might not be immediately apparent. Elena occasionally participated in these sessions, sharing technical knowledge while carefully avoiding personal details that might compromise her preferred anonymity. Jake Thompson had undergone a fundamental transformation in his approach to competitive shooting and community interaction. The expensive equipment that had once defined his identity as a marksman became tools rather than status symbols, and his focus shifted from impressing others to developing genuine skill and understanding of marksmanship principles. His relationship with Elena evolved slowly from embarrassed avoidance to respectful acknowledgement, and eventually to genuine appreciation for her knowledge and patience with students who approached her with appropriate courtesy. Their interactions remained professional and brief, but they reflected mutual respect between people who understood that competence transcended age, equipment, or public recognition. Brad Mitchell had also changed his approach to shooting and community participation, becoming an advocate for respectful treatment of all range users, regardless of their apparent experience levels or equipment quality. His conversations with other shooters now emphasized the danger of assumptions and the importance of treating everyone with dignity until they proved themselves unworthy of such consideration. The betting incident that had triggered Elena's demonstration was remembered as a cautionary tale about the cost of disrespect and the importance of recognizing that every person deserved courtesy regardless of their apparent circumstances. The money had never been collected, serving as a permanent reminder that assumptions could be expensive in ways that extended far beyond simple financial wagers. Lisa Chun had developed a friendship with Elena based on mutual respect and shared appreciation for the peaceful environment that Precision Point provided away from the pressures and expectations of more competitive shooting venues. Their conversations touched on topics ranging from equipment maintenance to weather patterns, avoiding personal history while building genuine connection based on present circumstances and shared interests. Elena's pickup truck had become a familiar sight in the Precision Point parking area, its reliable presence indicating that the facility would operate smoothly and safely regardless of weather conditions or user demands. The vehicle's age and simple functionality reflected Elena's approach to equipment and life, prioritizing reliability and effectiveness over appearance or status. Regular users had learned to observe Elena's assessment of daily conditions, understanding that her reading of wind patterns and atmospheric factors provided valuable information for anyone attempting precision shots at extended distances. Her knowledge came from experience that couldn't be easily quantified or explained, but its value was demonstrated daily through improved shooting performance by those wise enough to seek her guidance. The range's trophy case now included a discreet plaque commemorating exceptional achievements without naming specific individuals, allowing Elena's demonstration to be honored while respecting her preference for privacy. The recognition balanced community celebration with personal boundaries, creating a model for how extraordinary performance could be acknowledged without violating individual wishes for anonymity. Visiting instructors and military personnel occasionally recognized signs of Elena's background and capabilities, but Hayes had established clear protocols for protecting Elena's privacy while ensuring she received appropriate respect from people qualified to understand her true level of expertise. These interactions remained professional and discreet, acknowledging competence without demanding explanations or seeking to exploit experience for institutional benefit. Elena's influence on the shooting community extended through informal networks, as people who'd learned from her carried lessons about respect, assumption, and recognition to other facilities and competitions. Her impact was measured not through public acknowledgement, but through improved behavior and understanding among people who'd been touched by her example of quiet competence and dignified anonymity. The morning routine that had been interrupted by Jake and Brad's assumptions had resumed its peaceful rhythm, but with deeper appreciation for the expertise that Elena brought to every aspect of range operation. Her systematic approach to safety, equipment maintenance, and condition assessment reflected professional standards that elevated the entire facility's performance and reputation. Competitive shooters who visited Precision Point learned quickly that equipment comparison and status competition were discouraged in favor of skill development and respectful community building. Elena's demonstration had established standards for behavior that prioritized learning and mutual support over individual recognition or technological advantage. Weather conditions on the anniversary of Elena's shot were similar to that original morning, with clear air and minimal wind creating optimal conditions for long-distance shooting. Several regular users noted the parallels and reflected on how much their understanding of capability, respect, and community had evolved since witnessing Elena's casual demonstration of extraordinary skill. Elena marked the anniversary by continuing her normal routine, checking equipment and preparing the range for daily operations with the same quiet efficiency she'd always shown. Her behavior gave no indication that she considered the date significant, or that she felt any need to repeat her demonstration for the benefit of people who might have heard about it secondhand. Hayes observed the anniversary privately, understanding that Elena's shot had been more than a display of marksmanship skill, but a lesson in how assumptions could blind people to the extraordinary capabilities that existed around them in unexpected forms. The incident had changed Precision Point's culture permanently, creating an environment where respect was offered freely and capability was recognized regardless of its packaging. The electronic records of Elena's shot remained stored in the facility's systems, preserving technical details that documented what many would consider impossible under the circumstances. The data served as objective proof that exceptional achievement could occur without advance notice or elaborate preparation when genuine skill encountered optimal conditions and appropriate motivation. Training manuals and safety protocols at Precision Point now included references to the importance of treating all users with respect. Using Elena's story as an example, without violating her privacy or revealing details she preferred to keep confidential, the lesson had become integrated into the facility's educational programs, teaching new generations of shooters about the relationship between respect and recognition. Elena's legacy at Precision Point was measured not through public acknowledgement or competitive achievement, but through the improved atmosphere and enhanced learning opportunities that her influence had created. Her demonstration had proven that extraordinary capability could coexist with humble circumstances, and that respect should be offered based on human dignity, rather than apparent status or equipment quality. The shooting community that gathered at Precision Point had evolved into something unique in the regional marksmanship world, a place where skill was honored, learning was prioritized, and every person was treated with dignity, regardless of their background or apparent capabilities. Elena's influence could be felt in every interaction, though her preference for anonymity meant that her specific contributions remained largely invisible to casual observers. Long-distance shooting at Precision Point continued to attract experts and students seeking to test themselves against the facility's challenging ranges. But the competitive atmosphere had been tempered by lessons about respect and assumption that Elena's demonstration had provided. The environment now fostered genuine learning and skill development rather than simple competition for recognition or status. Elena's daily presence at the range served as a continuing reminder that exceptional capability could exist in humble circumstances, and that assumptions about people based on superficial observations were unreliable and potentially harmful. Her quiet competence influenced behavior and attitudes in ways that extended far beyond marksmanship technique to encompass fundamental questions of respect, dignity, and recognition. The mountain valley that surrounded Precision Point remained unchanged, providing the natural backdrop against which human drama played out daily through interactions between people seeking to develop precision shooting skills. Elena's demonstration had become part of the landscape's history, a reminder that extraordinary moments could emerge from ordinary circumstances when respect, skill, and opportunity intersected appropriately. Winter snow would soon cover the distant targets that Elena had hit with such casual precision, but the lessons learned from her demonstration would persist through seasonal changes and personnel transitions. The culture of respect and recognition that had evolved at Precision Point reflected permanent changes in understanding rather than temporary enthusiasm that would fade with time and changing circumstances. Elena Martinez continued her quiet work at the range, her extraordinary capabilities acknowledged by those who needed to know while protected from unwanted attention by people who understood that privacy was as valuable as recognition. Her story served as a permanent reminder that dignity, respect, and competence could coexist in ways that strengthened communities and fostered genuine learning among people committed to excellence in their chosen disciplines. 2 years had passed since Elena Martinez first demonstrated that assumptions could be dangerous and respect should be given freely rather than earned through public display of credentials. The autumn morning carried the same crisp clarity that had characterized that transformative day, but Precision Point shooting range had evolved into something entirely different from the facility, where competitive egos and equipment comparison had once dominated conversations among users. Elena stood at the 1,000-yard line, adjusting wind flags with the methodical precision that had become her signature approach to every task at the range. Her movements remained economical and purposeful, though careful observers might have noticed a slight stiffness in her stride that suggested the accumulated weight of decades spent in demanding physical conditions. At 69, she continued working with the same dedication that had characterized her military service and her civilian employment, but time was beginning to assert its inevitable influence. The morning's first shooters were arriving as Elena completed her equipment checks, their respectful greetings acknowledging both her expertise and her preference for professional rather than personal interaction. The transformation in behavior that had begun with her 2.3-mile demonstration had become permanently embedded in Precision Point's culture, creating an environment where competence was recognized regardless of its packaging and dignity was extended to everyone regardless of their apparent circumstances. A group of military veterans had requested permission to use the extended range for a memorial shoot honoring fallen comrades. Their ceremony planned to include precision shots at distances that would challenge even experienced marksmen. Hayes had approved the event with the understanding that Elena's guidance would be available if the participants requested assistance with technical aspects of extreme distance shooting. Colonel Patricia Hayes observed the veterans' preparation from her office window, noting their professional approach to equipment setup and safety protocols while reflecting on how Elena's presence had influenced the facility's reputation among serious shooting communities. Precision Point had become known throughout the region as a place where skill was honored and learning was prioritized over competition, attracting people who sought environments where excellence could be pursued without the personality conflicts that plagued some shooting venues. The veterans' leader, Master Sergeant James Rodriguez, had served multiple deployments in roles that required precision marksmanship under combat conditions. His equipment reflected both military experience and civilian adaptation, combining professional-grade optics with modifications that optimized performance for competitive rather than tactical applications. His respectful interaction with Elena demonstrated awareness that her background included capabilities that exceeded most civilian experience. Elena's response to Rodriguez's technical questions revealed knowledge that confirmed Hayes' assessment of her extraordinary qualifications, while maintaining the discretion that had protected her privacy throughout her time at Precision Point. Her explanations of ballistic calculations and environmental factors reflected understanding that came from practical application rather than theoretical study, though she carefully avoided details that might compromise operational security for programs that remained classified. The memorial ceremony began with formal recognition of service members who had died in conflicts that couldn't be publicly acknowledged, their sacrifices remembered by comrades who understood the cost of missions that would never appear in official histories. Elena stood quietly at the back of the gathering, her presence acknowledging shared experience while respecting the privacy that surrounded certain types of military service. Rodriguez attempted the first memorial shot at 28 miles, a distance that pushed beyond even Precision Point's normal extreme range into territory that few civilian facilities could accommodate. His preparation was thorough and professional, incorporating lessons learned through military training and combat experience, but the technical challenges of such distance required capabilities that exceeded conventional marksmanship instruction. The shot missed, impact coordinates showing placement that would have been acceptable at shorter distances, but insufficient for the precision required at extreme range, under memorial ceremony conditions. Rodriguez accepted the result with professional grace, understanding that exceptional performance couldn't be commanded or guaranteed, regardless of preparation and equipment quality. Elena approached Rodriguez quietly, offering observations about wind patterns and atmospheric conditions that he might incorporate into subsequent attempts. Her guidance was technical and specific, focusing on environmental factors that affected bullet trajectory at distances where traditional shooting techniques became adequate for achieving precision results. The second attempt, incorporating Elena's suggestions, achieved closer proximity to the target, but still failed to register a confirmed hit on the scoring system. Rodriguez acknowledged her assistance, while expressing frustration with his inability to achieve the precision that the memorial ceremony deserved, understanding that honoring fallen comrades required performance that exceeded normal recreational shooting standards. Other veterans in the group began requesting Elena's guidance, recognizing that her knowledge surpassed anything available through conventional instruction or competitive shooting experience. Their questions became increasingly technical, focusing on advanced ballistic calculations and environmental compensations that reflected genuine professional interest rather than casual curiosity about her background. Elena's responses revealed expertise that placed her capabilities far beyond what most people encountered in civilian shooting communities, though she maintained careful boundaries around information that could compromise operational security or violate classification, restrictions that remained in effect decades after her service had concluded. Her balance between helpful instruction and necessary discretion reflected experience with situations where knowledge sharing required consideration of security implications. Hayes joined the group as Elena's instruction session developed into an impromptu masterclass in extreme distance marksmanship, her presence ensuring that Elena's privacy was protected while her expertise was appropriately utilized for the Veterans Memorial Ceremony. The combination of Elena's knowledge and Hayes' administrative support created an environment where exceptional instruction could occur without compromising anyone's personal boundaries or security requirements. The technical discussion that developed around Elena's instruction covered topics ranging from atmospheric physics to equipment limitations, providing education that enhanced the veteran's understanding while respecting classification boundaries that prevented disclosure of specific operational details. Elena's teaching method emphasized principles and techniques rather than personal experience, allowing knowledge transfer without security violations. Rodriguez's third attempt incorporated multiple suggestions from Elena's instruction, achieving impact placement that satisfied the memorial ceremony's requirements while demonstrating the value of expert guidance for shooters attempting to exceed their previous performance levels. The successful shot honored fallen comrades while proving that exceptional achievement remained possible when skill, knowledge, and appropriate conditions combined effectively. The veterans' appreciation for Elena's assistance was expressed through professional courtesy rather than personal inquiry, their military background providing understanding of the boundaries that surrounded certain types of service and the respect that such experience deserved, regardless of its public acknowledgement. Their interaction demonstrated how expertise could be recognized and honored without violating privacy or demanding explanations that couldn't be provided. Elena's participation in the memorial ceremony marked the first time she had publicly displayed her instructional capabilities, though her teaching remained focused on technical assistance rather than demonstration of her own extraordinary marksmanship skills. The event provided confirmation of her expert-level knowledge while maintaining the anonymity that she had consistently preferred throughout her time at Precision Point. Hayes documented the memorial ceremony for facility records, understanding that Elena's instruction had provided exceptional value for the veterans, while establishing precedent for how her expertise could be utilized in appropriate circumstances, without compromising her privacy or security requirements. The balance between recognition and discretion reflected lessons learned through 2 years of managing Elena's unique situation. The veterans departed with enhanced understanding of extreme distance shooting techniques and deep appreciation for instruction that had elevated their performance beyond what conventional training could have achieved. Their respectful interaction with Elena provided confirmation that exceptional capability could be acknowledged and honored without demanding personal disclosure or public recognition that wasn't freely offered. Elena returned to her normal duties with the same quiet efficiency that had characterized her work throughout her time at Precision Point, her participation in the memorial ceremony representing expansion of her role rather than fundamental change in her approach to employment and community interaction. Her willingness to share technical knowledge when appropriate reflected growing comfort with the respectful environment that Hayes had fostered at the facility. The afternoon brought regular users who had learned to appreciate Elena's presence and expertise without demanding more interaction than she was comfortable providing. Their behavior reflected the cultural transformation that had occurred at Precision Point, where competence was recognized and honored regardless of its public visibility or official acknowledgement. Young shooters continued seeking Elena's guidance about wind reading and ballistic calculations, their questions reflecting genuine desire to learn, rather than curiosity about her background or attempts to test her knowledge for entertainment purposes. Elena's patient instruction helped them develop understanding that enhanced their performance while fostering respect for the complexity of precision marksmanship. Marcus Webb had become Elena's most consistent student, arriving early to observe her preparation routines and occasionally receiving detailed instruction about advanced techniques that required both theoretical understanding and practical experience to master effectively. Their relationship had evolved into genuine mentorship based on mutual respect and shared appreciation for precision shooting as both art and science. The electronic scoring system continued preserving records of exceptional achievements at Precision Point, though Elena's original 2-3-mile shot remained the standard by which all other extreme distance attempts were measured. The technical documentation served as objective proof of what could be accomplished when genuine skill encountered optimal conditions and appropriate motivation. Tony Russo's safety protocols had been permanently influenced by lessons learned from Elena's demonstration and subsequent instruction, incorporating understanding about respect, assumption, and recognition into training programs that helped new users appreciate the complexity of shooting sports while fostering inclusive community environments where everyone could learn and improve. The facility's reputation continued attracting serious marksmen from throughout the Mountain West, people seeking environments where skill development could occur without the competitive tensions that characterize some shooting venues. Elena's influence on Precision Point's culture had created something unique in the regional shooting community, a place where excellence was pursued through mutual support rather than individual competition. Elena's daily routine included increasing amounts of informal instruction, as regular users learned to approach her with appropriate respect and genuine desire for learning. Her willingness to share technical knowledge reflected growing comfort with the teaching role while maintaining boundaries around personal information that she preferred to keep private. Hayes often reflected on the transformation that Elena's presence had brought to Precision Point, understanding that the changes extended far beyond improved shooting techniques to encompass fundamental questions about how communities could foster excellence while maintaining inclusive, respectful environments. Elena's influence had proven that exceptional capability could strengthen communities when properly recognized and appropriately utilized. The mountain valley that surrounded Precision Point continued providing the natural backdrop for human interactions that demonstrated daily lessons about respect, assumption, and recognition. Elena's story had become part of the landscape's permanent character, influencing behavior and attitudes in ways that would persist long after individual participants had moved on to other pursuits. Elena's legacy at Precision Point was measured through improved community culture rather than public recognition or competitive achievement. Her impact visible in the respectful interactions between users and the enhanced learning opportunities that her expertise had made possible. Her demonstration had proven that dignity and competence could coexist in ways that strengthen communities while honoring individual privacy and personal boundaries. Training programs at the facility now included Elena's technical instruction, alongside traditional safety protocols and marksmanship fundamentals, providing education that elevated performance standards while maintaining the respectful atmosphere that had become Precision Point's distinguishing characteristic among regional shooting venues. Elena Martinez continued her quiet work at the range, her extraordinary capabilities acknowledged by those who needed to know while protected from unwanted attention by people who understood that privacy was as valuable as recognition. Her presence served as daily reminder that assumptions about capability based on superficial observations were unreliable and potentially harmful to community building and individual dignity. The afternoon sun began casting long shadows across the valley floor as Elena completed her final equipment checks of the day, her systematic approach ensuring that Precision Point would operate safely and efficiently regardless of weather conditions or user demands. Her dedication to excellence in every aspect of range operation reflected the same professional standards that had characterized her military service and continued defining her civilian employment. Winter would soon return to the Colorado mountains, covering the distant targets with snow and limiting extreme distance shooting opportunities until spring weather created optimal conditions once again. But the lessons learned from Elena's demonstration and instruction would persist through seasonal changes, providing permanent influence on how people approached precision shooting and community interaction at Precision Point. Elena's story remained largely untold in its complete form, protected by classification restrictions and personal privacy preferences that prevented full disclosure of her background and achievements. But her influence on the shooting community was measured through changed behavior and enhanced understanding rather than public recognition, creating legacy that honored her service while respecting her chosen anonymity. The letter arrived on a Thursday morning in late spring, delivered by military courier to Hayes' office with the kind of official discretion that suggested government business requiring careful handling. The envelope bore no external markings beyond Hayes' name and address, but the security protocols surrounding its delivery indicated contents that transcended normal civilian correspondence or routine military communication. Elena had been working the morning shift as usual, her methodical preparation of range equipment proceeding with the same quiet efficiency that had characterized every day of her employment at Precision Point. The seasonal transition from winter to spring shooting conditions required careful attention to target positioning and wind flag placement, tasks that Elena completed with professional thoroughness while regular users began arriving for their scheduled practice sessions. Hayes opened the letter in private, understanding immediately that its contents related to Elena, despite the careful language that avoided specific names or identifying details. The document outlined changes in classification status and retirement, benefits that would affect certain former military personnel whose service records remained partially restricted due to operational security requirements that persisted decades after their active duty had concluded. The bureaucratic language concealed human impact, describing policy modifications that would provide enhanced retirement support for people whose contributions to national security had been significant but couldn't be publicly acknowledged due to classification restrictions that protected ongoing operations and sensitive methodologies. Elena qualified for benefits that would eliminate her financial need for civilian employment, while ensuring access to medical care appropriate for veterans whose service had involved unusual physical and psychological demands. Elena continued her range maintenance duties, unaware of the policy changes that would soon affect her circumstances, her focus remaining on immediate responsibilities rather than potential future developments that might alter her daily routine. Her systematic approach to equipment checking and target positioning reflected professional standards that elevated every aspect of Precision Point's operation while maintaining the safety protocols that protected all users. Hayes spent considerable time reviewing the letter's implications, understanding that Elena's enhanced benefits would likely eliminate her motivation for continued employment at Precision Point, while providing opportunities for retirement circumstances that better reflected her service record and achieved rank. The prospect of losing Elena's expertise and steadying influence on the facility's culture created professional concerns that extended beyond simple personnel management. Regular users arrived throughout the morning with the expectation that Elena's guidance would be available for technical questions about wind conditions and ballistic calculations. Their confidence in her expertise, having grown steadily since her initial demonstration, had revealed capabilities that exceeded anything available through conventional instruction or competitive shooting experience. Her willingness to share knowledge had become integral to Precision Point's educational environment and community atmosphere. The conversation between Hayes and Elena took place in the facility's quiet administrative office, away from the shooting positions where their discussion wouldn't be overheard by users who might be concerned about potential changes in personnel or operations. Hayes presented the information about enhanced benefits carefully, emphasizing that Elena's employment status remained entirely her personal decision while ensuring she understood the financial security that new policies would provide. Elena received the information with the same calm demeanor that had characterized her response to every situation during her time at Precision Point, asking practical questions about implementation timelines and benefit details while giving no immediate indication of how the changes might affect her plans for continued civilian employment. Her response suggested someone accustomed to evaluating options carefully before making decisions that would affect long-term circumstances. The enhanced retirement benefits reflected government recognition of service that couldn't be publicly acknowledged, providing compensation for sacrifices that had been made during classified operations and assignments that would never appear in official military histories. Elena's eligibility confirmed Hayes' understanding of her background while demonstrating that bureaucratic systems occasionally produced results that honored exceptional service despite their usual inefficiency. Elena's decision to accept enhanced retirement came after several days of careful consideration, her choice reflecting both practical evaluation of financial circumstances and recognition that her presence at Precision Point had achieved its intended purpose of providing peaceful transition from military to civilian life. Her time at the range had offered healing and community connection that helped process decades of service in roles that required isolation from normal social relationships. The announcement of Elena's retirement was made quietly to regular users who had benefited from her instruction and guidance, their responses reflecting genuine appreciation for her contributions to their skill development and the facility's respectful atmosphere. Marcus Webb's reaction was particularly thoughtful, acknowledging that Elena's teaching had transformed his understanding of marksmanship while respecting her decision to pursue different activities in retirement. Tony Russo's response to Elena's departure plans included practical concerns about maintaining equipment standards and safety protocols that had been enhanced by her professional approach to range management. Elena assured him that written documentation of her procedures would be available for reference, ensuring continuity of operations that would preserve Precision Point's reputation for excellence and safety. The farewell gathering was organized by regular users rather than facility management, reflecting their desire to acknowledge Elena's contributions while respecting her preference for modest recognition that avoided public attention or detailed discussion of her background. The event was scheduled for a quiet afternoon when the range would be available for private use without interfering with normal operations or attracting unwanted curiosity from casual visitors. Elena's final days at Precision Point included completion of detailed documentation about equipment maintenance, weather pattern recognition, and advanced marksmanship techniques that would preserve her expertise for future reference even after her physical presence was no longer available for direct consultation. Her systematic approach to knowledge transfer reflected military training in ensuring mission continuity despite personnel changes. Hayes arranged for Elena's personnel records to reflect appropriate recognition of her contributions to Precision Point's operation and reputation, though the language remained carefully neutral to avoid compromising her privacy or revealing details about her background that she preferred to keep confidential. The documentation would serve as professional reference while protecting the anonymity that Elena had consistently maintained. The farewell afternoon drew participants who represented the community that had developed around Elena's quiet influence, people whose approach to shooting sports had been permanently improved by her instruction and example. Their gathering was characterized by genuine appreciation rather than ceremonial formality, reflecting relationships based on mutual respect and shared learning rather than hierarchical recognition or competitive achievement. Elena's remarks to the assembled group were brief and focused on technical aspects of marksmanship that would help them continue developing their skills after her departure. She emphasized principles of safety, respect, and continuous learning that transcended specific techniques or equipment choices, providing guidance that would remain relevant regardless of how their individual circumstances might change over time. The presentation of a custom rifle case bearing discreet acknowledgement of Elena's service was made without fanfare or detailed explanation, the gift representing community appreciation while respecting her preference for private recognition rather than public ceremony. Elena's acceptance was gracious and professional, acknowledging the thoughtfulness while maintaining the dignified reserve that had characterized all her interactions at Precision Point. Marcus Webb's personal farewell to Elena included expression of gratitude for instruction that had transformed his understanding of precision shooting from technical exercise to philosophical discipline requiring patience, respect, and humility. Their conversation was private and brief, acknowledging mentorship that had influenced his approach to marksmanship and community interaction in ways that would persist long after Elena's departure. Elena's final range inspection was conducted, with the same thoroughness that had characterized every day of her employment, ensuring that equipment was properly positioned and maintained for optimal safety and performance. Her systematic attention to detail provided lasting example of professional standards that would influence Precision Point's operation long after her physical presence was no longer available for direct reference. The transition of Elena's responsibilities to other personnel was managed carefully to preserve operational continuity, while acknowledging that her unique combination of expertise and experience couldn't be directly replaced. Hayes ensured that Elena's procedural documentation would be preserved and referenced regularly, maintaining institutional knowledge that would benefit future range operations and user instruction. Elena's departure from Precision Point occurred early on a Monday morning, her exit as understated as her daily presence had been throughout her employment. She loaded her personal equipment into her pickup truck with the same efficient movements that had characterized her work, giving no indication that she considered the transition to be particularly significant or emotionally demanding. The range felt different without Elena's presence, though her influence on community culture and operational standards remained evident in the respectful interactions between users and the continued emphasis on safety and learning that had become Precision Point's distinguishing characteristics. Her legacy was measured through changed behavior and enhanced understanding rather than visible monuments or public recognition. Regular users gradually adapted to Elena's absence while maintaining the standards of respect and technical excellence that her instruction and example had established. The transformation of Precision Point's community culture had become self-sustaining, with experienced users teaching newer participants about the values and practices that Elena had helped develop through her quiet influence and professional expertise. Hayes received occasional updates about Elena's retirement activities through informal military networks, learning that she had found peaceful circumstances that provided appropriate recognition of her service while maintaining the privacy that she had consistently preferred. The information was shared discreetly among people who understood the significance of Elena's background, while respecting her chosen anonymity. Elena's story continued to influence Precision Point's culture through the permanent changes that her presence had created in community attitudes about respect, assumption, and recognition. Her demonstration that exceptional capability could exist in humble circumstances provided lasting lessons that helped users approach marksmanship and interpersonal interaction with enhanced understanding and appreciation for human complexity. The electronic records of Elena's achievements remained permanently stored in Precision Point systems, providing objective documentation of what could be accomplished when genuine skill encountered optimal conditions and appropriate motivation. The data served as inspiration for shooters attempting to exceed their previous performance, while honoring the memory of someone whose capabilities had redefined understanding of what was possible in civilian marksmanship. Training programs at Precision Point continued incorporating Elena's technical instruction alongside traditional safety protocols, providing education that elevated performance standards while maintaining the respectful atmosphere that had become the facility's most valuable characteristic. Her influence on community culture had created something unique in regional shooting sports, an environment where excellence was pursued through mutual support rather than individual competition. Elena Martinez had found peace in retirement circumstances that honored her service while providing the privacy and recognition that decades of classified contribution had earned. Her influence on Precision Point and its community would persist through the permanent changes in understanding and behavior that her quiet presence had created, providing lasting legacy that honored both her service and her humanity. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.